Okay, thank you for joining us in this brief demo session for the Outcome-Based Assessment Platform, or OBAP in short. First of all, let's see where we can get the latest OBAP files. For that, we need to head over to the website of OBAP, which is www.triplegreen.org/OBAP. Okay, once this page loads, you can see the latest version of OBAP will be always listed on top. As of making this video, we can see that it's OBAP Theory Release version 3.4. So we can click on that link. It will take us to the Harvard Dataverse, which is actually where our files are stored. Over here, we can see the lab file for OBAP, manual for the manual files as well is uploaded here. And also this one that we're going to use for today's demo session, OBAP Theory version 3.4, which is the OBAP file for theory courses. We can download this file, click here. You see MS Excel spreadsheet. It shows you the license agreement. You can accept. Okay, this is the OBAP theory file. So as you can see, first of all, this file is actually comprised of many different spreadsheets inside this actually workbook. So we have info, list, students, CT1, CT2, etc. And one thing that I must mention in the beginning is not all these sheets here are actually editable. For example, the sheets that are coded in red color, for example, you can see MM, FM, KC1, KC2R, as well as the last one, report. These sheets are actually completely locked and doesn't need to be edited by the user at all. So these sheets will be generated based on the information provided on the other sheets. Okay, so we're going to start with the info page. And over here, first of all, we can see that this page requires some very general information about the course that you're conducting. For example, course code, your department, course title, the batch you're conducting the course with, semester, your name, and your designation. So you can fill up these information based on your personal information and the course information. Now, one very important thing to remember about the OBAP file in general is any cell that are marked with this light green color, that is shaded with this light green color, are actually editable cells. Any other cells that are not shaded with this light green are not editable and doesn't need to be edited by the user. For example, we've already inputted course title, course code, course teacher's name, etc. here. So in any other page where these information actually come up, are actually automatically filled up. For example, if you go to the, let's say, the grade file, over here we can see that course code, course title, teacher's name, these information are already filled up here. You cannot edit these cells here because they're not green. Like, so for example, if you want to edit this course teacher's name here, you cannot because it's actually protected. So what do you need to do is these basic information about the course and the course teacher need to be filled up only in the info page. All the other sheets will be automatically updated. Any cell that are not marked with the green shading will not be editable. Okay, so next up, we need to fill up the COPO mapping of this course. As you can see, here we have a CO versus PO table. Now, where would we get this information? First of all, for demonstration purposes, some of these cells are actually automatically filled up. We need to select all the cells here and hit delete to remove all the existing data. Now, one file that you're going to need over and over again to fill up the whole OBAP file is the course profile of the course you are conducting. For example, let's open up the course profile of this course. Okay, this is the course profile. Over here, if you go down, you can find that in this part, we have the mapping as to which CO actually is mapped to which PO for this particular course. For example, we can see that CO1 is actually mapped to PO1. So we need to reflect this information in our OBAP file. So let's head over there. So CO1 needs to be mapped to PO1. So we're going to put a 1 here. So now you can see that CO1 and PO1 is actually mapped. Now we need to only put the value 1 inside this table nothing else. So only one where the mapping should be done. For example, in CO2, we can see that CO2 is mapped to PO1 and PO10. Just to make sure that this is just an example file for the demonstration purposes, your course and your mapping will be completely different. So CO2, for example, in this sample, we need to map with PO1 and PO10. So we will map CO2 with PO1 and PO10. Now you can see that CO2, we've actually mapped it with PO1 and PO10. Similarly, CO3 should be mapped to PO2. CO4 is mapped to PO3. CO4, we can map with PO3 just by using the digit 1. CO5 is mapped to PO9. CO5 to PO9 here. CO6 is also mapped to PO9. Done that. And lastly, CO7 is mapped to PO10. CO7 to PO10. So our mapping is done. There is no CO8 for this particular course, so the last row can be empty. Now, let's come to the list. This list file actually lists the course outcomes and program outcomes for this particular course. Now, again, for demo purposes, some of the COs are already filled up in the file that you're going to download. So what you can do is you can remove, and you need to fill up the course outcomes of your particular course. So again, we can find that info in the course profile. Over here, we can see each of the COs are mentioned clearly here. So what we can do here, we're going to copy the individual COs and paste them here. Just like that, we can fill up this remaining of the cells here. For your particular program outcomes, actually, these are set by your department, should be same for all the remaining courses, all the courses of your own department. So you can get that info from the course profile as well. Here we can see that each of the 12 POs are actually mentioned in the course profile as well. Okay, then on to the students sheet. On the demo file that you're going to download, the names of the students are already going to be filled in, but you're going to have to use your own student name and student list. So first of all, we're going to have to delete or remove the existing names. Now, as we can clearly understand that the names and student IDs of the students will be used in all the other sheets as well. For example, class test 1, class test 2, KSA 1. Now, the names of the students need to be inserted only on this students sheet and not on any other sheet. So if you change the names of the students on this students sheet, all the other sheets will be changed automatically. For example, let's see if I remove the names from this first sheet. As you can see, in the other sheets as well, the names of the students have been automatically removed. Now, where can you find the list of your students, particularly who are registered in your course? You can find it in many different places. For example, you can find it in your grade sheet or your attendance sheet. Wherever there's a list of your students, you can use that. For example, in this case, we will use the attendance list of our students. Let's say this is the class attendance for this. Okay, we can copy the student IDs and student names, and we can paste them here. When we're pasting, we can try to use the paste values only so that the formatting of the page is intact. So as you can see, these students are filled up. We can remove the unused serial numbers from here. And now, if we check the other pages, the students list that we have inputted here on the students sheet are actually automatically updated in the other sheets as well. So you need to do that only on the students page, and the other pages are not editable in the students area. As you can see, if you can double click here, it will not allow you to do that. So you need to do that only on the students sheet. Okay, now on to the actual grading or scoring part. For that, you need to understand that the scoring system for the class test 1, class test 2, midterms, and final are very much similar. So if you understand only one of these segments, we can actually use that to fill up the other pages as well. KSA1 and KSA2 are a bit different, so we'll get to that a bit later. So just for demo purposes, we will try to fill up the mid spreadsheet here, the midterm. This is actually the midterm exam marks entry sheet, as you can see on top. CT1 is class test marks entry sheet. CT2 is class test 2 marks entry sheet. KSA1 and KSA2 are knowledge, skills, and attributes. We'll get to that later. And mid and final are marks entry sheets for midterm and final exams, respectively. So let's say if we want to score the students for the midterm exams. Now, for that, we were going to need, first of all, the question paper for the midterm exam. As we can see in the first row, here's a list of questions. Over here, we can see 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B. This is actually the list that's going to appear on your midterm exam question. So we're going to open that question paper now. Let's see. This, for example, is a sample question paper for the midterm exam. And we can see that the questions here are 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B, 3A, 3B, right? So we can fill those up here. So just for demo purposes, let me remove all of the information that are here. I can list the questions exactly as it is listed in the question paper. So we have questions 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B, 3A, and 3B. So 1A, 3A, and 3B. So that is the function of the top row, which is list of questions. And just to help the users a bit, if you hover over this cell here, you'll get some information about how to fill up this row. Next, we're going to fill up choose the CO per question. From the question paper, if you can see that each question is actually assigned a particular CO or course outcome and is also allocated a particular mark. For example, question 1A is actually mapped to CO3 and allocated 5 marks. So we can fill up that information on the OBAP file. So question 1A, we're going to choose the CO. Here's this drop-down menu here, CO3, and we can allocate 5 marks here. Now this must be corresponding to the question paper of the midterm exam. So similarly, we go to question 1B. We see that question 1B is actually marked to CO2 and allocated 5 marks. So question 1B, I should choose CO2 and allocate 5 marks. So we can fill up the remaining of the questions CO and mark allocations in a similar manner. Now, what about the level of taxonomy? Okay, how are we going to get that? For that, we need the knowledge of Bloom's taxonomy. For example, in the question 1A, if we read the question, we can say this is a mathematical question, and the action verb here is this one, calculate. So this is what the student is actually instructed to do in this question. So in this question, the student is instructed to calculate something. And calculate, as we know from Bloom's taxonomy, is actually C3, cognitive domain level 3. So we need to choose C3 from this drop-down menu. Now, if you have any confusion about the Bloom's taxonomy, you can actually use a reference file that we've also provided in the OBAP webpage. Let's just give you a quick look. In the OBAP webpage, if you scroll down a bit, action verbs based on Bloom's taxonomy. If you click this file, click this link, you'll get a file where all the action verbs are listed based on different Bloom's taxonomy domains. So you can take help from that file. Similarly, and just for one more example, 1B, question number 1B, we can see that it is the action verb is illustrate, or action verb can be determine. And we know that from Bloom's taxonomy, both of these action verbs are actually pointing to C3 or apply level. So we're going to choose C3. So similarly, we can fill up the information for the rest of the questions of midterm. Now, what about the marks? Well, of course, the marks that are inputted here are only for demo purposes. We need to select them all, hit delete and remove. Now, we need the actual exam scripts of the students to fill up this part. So we need to check how much score a particular student has achieved for each individual question. For example, in 1A, say the first student has got 3 marks, we can input 3. And the second question, he's got 4, we need to input 4. In question number 2A, let's say, first of all, we need to fill up all the full marks or the allocated marks of each question. Let's say all the questions are for 5 marks each. Now, for example, in question 2A, let's say the first student's got 3, and the next question 2, and the next question he's got 5, and the last question he's got 4. Now, the scoring for the first student is actually completed. Now, allocated marks for each question must be filled up based on the question, as we have already shown. And just to show you a validation process of this file, this is the total mark of question number 3B, right? As we can see, in question 3B, the allocated mark is 5. So each student cannot actually get more than 5 marks in question number 3B, right? And actually, his validation process is included in this file. So for example, if you try to give the student by mistake 6 marks, it will actually give you an error message to retry because the value is actually wrong. So in a similar way, we need to fill up the marking of each and every student for this particular course. Now, the marking process for final class test 1 and class test 2 sheets be exactly similar to midterm. We need to fill up the question numbers, level of taxonomy for each question, COs mapped to each question, and marks allocated to each question. And then we need to score the students for each question's marks. Now, let's get to KSA1 and KSA2. KSA stands for, as we know, knowledge, skills, and attributes, where we can assess each student based on different types of knowledge or skills or attitudes, right? Now, as you can see, in KSA1 actually is divided into 2 rubrics, rubrics 1, rubrics 2. Similarly, KSA2 will also be divided into rubrics 1 and rubrics 2. And if you can see the assessment type for each rubric, for example, if we are working on rubrics 1, we see in the drop-down menu for type, what type of assessment are we using for rubrics 1? We can see that we have a few options here: presentation, class performance, assignment, project, term paper, viva, and portfolio, right? Also for rubrics 2, we'll get the same drop-down menu. And in case 2 as well, we will have the same drop-down menus for both rubrics. Now, how can we find out how we're going to assess KSA1 and KSA2? In an ideal scenario, your department's course profile for your particular course would already have this information. For example, let's see. In this course profile, we can see that there is an assessment plan. And in this assessment plan, we can see the breakdown for KSA1 and the breakdown for KSA2. So we can see here, you can zoom in a little. KSA1, the 10 marks is actually divided between 2 assessments or 2 rubrics. First of all, 6 marks for PT and 4 marks for CP. What does PT stand for? PT actually stands for project, as we can see from here. And CP stands for class performance, as we can see from here. So let's try to assign these values on the KSA sheet. So KSA1 should be divided between 6 marks on project and 4 marks on class performance. So first one is project, and I should allocate 6 marks. And the next one is class performance. And as you can see, 4 is automatically selected here, and this cell is white, it's not green. So only you need to allocate marks for the first rubric, and the remaining marks will be automatically allocated to the second rubric. So we have allocated 6 marks to project and 4 marks to class performance. But what about the other green cells we can see here? For example, level and this CO. What you do with those things? Okay, so let's head over to the course profile again. As we can see, in KSA1, the 6 marks that are allocated to project PT is actually mapped to CO4. Let's just highlight this part for a bit. The 6 marks in project is mapped to CO4 and the domain and level is P4. Let's see if you can replicate those information here. So again, 6 marks that is for PT will be mapped to CO4 and will be assigned a domain and level P4. Here we can see the drop down of COs. So we are selecting CO4 and we can choose the level as well, which will be P4. P4. Now we can see that this information is completely replicated in the OBAP file. So let's try the next one. I'll just highlight it for temporary basis. Let's see, KSA1's second rubric, 4 marks allocated to CP. This needs to be mapped to CO6 and the domain and level should be P5. So this one, class performance, CO6 and the level should be P5. See, this is now the OBAP file actually now reflects this KSA1 assessment plan. So let's try that one for the KSA2 as well. In KSA2, we see that, let's just highlight this bit and also these 2 rows for easier understanding. As you can see, KSA2 will have 10 marks divided between 2 assessments or 2 rubrics, 5 marks in AS and 5 marks in PS. What are AS and PS? You can see AS stands for assignment and PS stands for presentation. So let's do that first. 5 each to assignment and presentation. So this is the KSA2 sheet. 5 marks, first of all, to assignment, and the next 5 marks to presentation. We have set the first 2, the 2 rubrics for KSA2. Now to set the CO and the cognitive levels. As you can see, the first one, the 5 marks assigned to assignment, is mapped to CO5. So let's do that. We choose CO5. And the cognitive level, as actually we can see that we have 2 domains or levels here. This is actually from the affective domain, A2 and A3. Now, we can't choose both of these domains here on the Excel file, so we will choose the higher domain, which is A3. A3. So now we can see the first rubrics is assignment, marks allocated is 5, allocated CO is CO5, and the domain and level is A3. This reflects the first assessment rubric for KSA2. Similarly, for the next one, we can see that the second rubric for KSA2 is actually mapped with CO6. So we map it with CO6. And for this one, we can see that the domain should be P2, which is the second domain of the psychomotor domain, P2. Okay, so the second rubric is actually allocated 5 marks. It is a presentation type. It is mapped to CO6 and the domain level is P2. So we have actually reflected the information in this assessment plan on the OBAP file as well. So you can follow your own course profile to accurately reflect the assessment plan on this KSA1 and KSA2 sheets over here. Now on to scoring both KSA1 and KSA2 for each of the students. First of all, we need to remove all the information that are already filled up. Only from the green cells, of course. Again, reminding, the green cells are editable. Now, as you can see, let's say for the first rubric, rubric 1, we have 6 marks allocated for rubric 1. So the total should be 6, right? And we can see that the first rubric is actually divided into some KPIs, KPI 1, KPI 2. KPI stands for Key Performance Indicator. Now, what should be the key performance indicators for this type of assessment, which is project? Where can you find this information, or what are the KPIs? First of all, this information, again, can be found from your course profile. As you can see, in this course profile, we have rubrics for assessments, project, PT, and we can see this particular assessment KPI, or this rubric, has actually 4 KPIs, KPI 1, 2, 3, and 4. So KPI 1, 2, 3, and 4 can be used. Now, if you don't have the rubrics on your course profile, you can also use another different file we have on the OBAP webpage. In the OBAP webpage, we have rubrics for all KPI. This file is actually provided on our OBAP webpage. You can use that file to find the KPIs of different assessments like assignment, presentation, project, teamwork, etc. Now, since the total mark for rubrics 1 is 6, the natural inclination is the 4 KPIs should total to 6. For example, 2, 1, 1, and 2, right? So now the total is 6. Marking a student between within 2 marks or within 1 marks can be a little bit difficult. So to make it more flexible for the course teachers, what we have done in this OBAP file is you can actually assign any value to the KPI total marks. For example, you can assign 10 marks for each KPI. Now you can actually grade each student within this 10 marks. For example, let's say the first student has got 5 in KPI 1, 7 in KPI 2, 8 in KPI 3, and 6 in KPI 4. So his total is actually 26 out of 40, right? But we already said that rubric 1, the total marks for rubric 1 will be 6. So this 26 out of 40 will be automatically converted into 6 marks on some back calculation, as you can see, is done over here on the total column. This calculation is actually done in the KSA1R sheet, on this sheet, which is actually doesn't need to be edited at all. It actually can't be edited by the users. This is where actually the calculation is done, where the total marking of each student's rubric 1 and rubric 2 is actually converted into the total marks allocated for each rubric. So this 26 is converted into how much this student has got within 6 marks. So this will be automatically calculated by this Excel file. So just for demonstration purposes, let's see, we also allocate some marks for rubrics 2. So now we can see we have this student has scored 26 out of 40 in rubrics 1 and 25 out of 40 in rubrics 2. And both of these numbers, 26 and 25, are actually converted based on the total marks allocated for rubrics 1 and 2, and the total marks for the KSA1 is actually calculated here, which is 6.4. In a very similar fashion, we can also fill up the KSA2 sheet. So now there are some of the remaining part that we need to check out, or I need to know about this OBAP file. First of all, KSA1 and KSA2 these are KSA report files. These 2 sheets are not editable at all, so the calculations are done in this sheet. The R grade sheet is actually the running grade sheet. It will develop a grade sheet based on the assessments that we've already filled up. For example, in a running semester, you have already filled up the class test 1 and class test 2 sheets, but midterm and final exams have not been conducted yet. So this grade sheet would give you an idea about the student's performance based on only the data that you have inputted so far. The grade sheet will be the final grade sheet of the course after you filled up all the different assessments for the whole course. The CO sheet will actually give you idea about the student's performance in each individual CO, how much each student has achieved out of the total marks that we have assessed for each CO in this course. Similarly, in the PO sheet, we can see the performance of each student for each PO or each program outcome. Whether any individual student has achieved a particular CO or PO will be automatically calculated in this sheet, which is attainment. And finally, the report sheet will give you detailed reports of the students and the overall course performance. So that's it for the brief demo on the OBAP Excel file. You can come back to this video later if you have any confusions. Actually, we also provided a PDF version of the instruction manual here on the OBAP webpage. You can come here and OBAP manual theory version 1. If you can click that, it will come to this Harvard Dataverse page again from where we can download the OBAP manual in PDF format. And that was all from us in this session. Thank you for joining us.